Hello everyone and welcome to another production video. Today I'm going to look at a track by an artist called Beckie Margaret, and this song's called New York. I've worked with Beckie now for a couple of years, and we've just recently finished tracking her debut album. This track that I'm going to look at today was the first track that we worked on together. We decided to try a song and see whether the relationship worked well, see if we worked well together, and we done this track and we released it, and that went well. So we decided to carry on working together, and we just, like I said, we've just completed her debut album. So the campaign for that album is going to be starting soon. There's going to be some music coming out from the album, so I thought perfect opportunity to jump back to this song, which is already currently out, and just deconstruct it a little bit. I'm not going to go heavily into the mixing. I'm just going to talk more about the production choices, and just sort of explain to you a little bit about what we were thinking when we were working on the track. So I'm actually going to play you the music video for this song, so you can really get a feel for what Beckie's all about. A little bit of backstory on Beckie. She is an amazing alt-pop artist. She's signed to a brilliant independent label called Cool Thing Records, and this music video was made by a very talented filmmaker called Andrew Delaney, who has a brilliant film company called New Art Films. So I'll leave links to both the label and Andy's film company in the video description, so you can check those out. And here's the video.
I'm just on a list of who you let down. I hope you're happy with me. Miss New York, Miss New York.
Okay, so if we jump into the session and we start sort of picking apart all the different elements, as I'm scrolling through, there's quite a lot going on. We coined the phrase the kitchen sink when we were working on Becky's stuff, as we decided that certain tracks needed to have everything except the kitchen sink added and others needed to be left alone. So we kind of had on our album progress board, we actually had a column called kitchen sink, and there were certain tracks that had to have half a day of experimentation just so we could colour in the kitchen sink part of the board, which was just a bit of fun. But it's kind of, it's a good mentality to work with, to sort of allow yourself to go that far and try every possible idea, and at times refrain yourself from doing that, so not always doing it. This track, we definitely did. We tried every idea possible. We really wanted it to be a slow start and build up to a real big climax. So what I'm going to do is just sort of start to solo some of the elements that Becky had from her demo, so you can get a feel for where this all started. So I'm just going to solo some bits. So there's this mellotron, which was on Becky's demo. There's a choir, a synth pad, some atmospheric noises, some storm effect noises, another synth string. These were all things that Becky had already had in her Logic session at home, and should send me the session and I would have a look and maybe make some adjustments to the EQ on some of the stems and then bounce them out, import them into Pro Tools, and would go from there. So there's also a synth bass that was existing from Becky's demo. So I'll put the vocal in, although at this point there would have only been a guide vocal, but this is kind of where we would have been starting from.
You picked me up and we went out driving before the earth goes, before you dyed your hair, before Miss New York standing over there.
So as you can hear, Becky really had the idea for the song already mapped out. It just needed to be embellished, and we needed to accentuate the things that we wanted to make more apparent. So I suppose a good place to start would be the bass. So Becky had a synth bass in her demo, which is this one here. And what we decided to do was roll off the low end from that bass. So we're keeping the character that she'd got with the kind of mechanical sound, but we're not necessarily using it for the low end in the track. And we added a sub bass to that, so I can show you those together. And we also added a Moog bass. Again, rolling off the bottom end, just keeping the fizzy, distorted stuff, so I can show you all three basses together. And that's the bass. And what would have happened on Becky's demo is the bass wouldn't have come in until that second pre-chorus there. And what we decided was that it was too lopsided on the low end, just having all the bass on the second half of the song and having nothing at the start. So we just put in a single note sub bass throughout the whole beginning, which fades in, right from the very beginning. Just holding one note there, and just what we were trying to achieve was like a cinematic ambient sound that was full range. So even though it was reserved at the start and it's going to get a lot more epic, we didn't want it to feel reserved in a sonic sense. It needed to feel full to support her vocal all the way through. So that was the thinking there. So that's the bass. With the drums on this track, it was a bit of a unorthodox approach, really. Some of Beckie's tracks have got drum machines, programming. Some of them have got live drums, and some of them have got a combination of both. On this one, it was very much a case of we had a day in the studio to get this track down. We didn't have endless time, so we were working quite quick. So it was very much a case of like, I've got an idea, let's try it, and let's move quickly. So I seem to remember that I sort of just jumped up and ran in the other room and just put a mic up on whatever kit was set up in the room at the time and just played a part, just to sort of see whether Beckie was gonna like what I was doing and think that it would work. And it looks like that loop actually ended up making it into the final version. So I can show you that drum loop that I played on its own. And I'm just doing some EQ, some compression with the pusher from Kush, and sending that down the reverb that we had set up for the vocal. So just really simple. I can show you it without the plugins so you can hear what the mic sounded like on its own. So kind of roomy. The mic was probably set up for a guitar or a vocal in the room, and I just sat at the drums with the mic on and went for it. And it ended up working quite well, so we ended up keeping it. So here's it again with the plugins. And what I've done is I've added a kick and snare to that. So I can play you that drum loop with the kick and snare as well. So I'll just show you what I was working with the kicks and the snares. So looks like I've played, yeah. So what I've done is, the process that I would have gone through would have been to record these flams on the snare first by the looks of things. So I'll show you what that sounded like when I've recorded it dry. So just me playing flams with the mics in the same position on the same snare and the same drum kit, knowing that I was going to trigger a sample. I wasn't looking for the perfect snare sound when I was doing that. So what I've done is I've added a Renaissance X compressor to that just to even out the levels on that snare flam, and that would maintain a good velocity on each trigger. So the sound that's going into the trigger plugin is very much leveled out, so the samples are being triggered at an even velocity each time. Some EQ, doing my normal trick of finding the resonant peak at the bottom to boost the bottom end of the snare, adding some top end at 10k 1.5, adding some more at 100 odd hertz, and then adding a little bit more top end with the air module there, and then just a couple of reverbs to sort of get the sound that we were going for on this snare sample. So that's the snare. So nice and fat, but with plenty of ambience on it as well. And with the kick, what I would have done is just chopped the start of the snare transient and just pasted it in where I wanted it. So rather than using a MIDI instrument to have a MIDI note to trigger the trigger plugin, I'm just using a miscellaneous piece of audio, cutting it, making sure it's got a really strong transient, and using that to trigger the kick sample. And it looks like I've done the same with the toms, which I'll show you in a sec. So the kick was just the Dream Kick from Slate. I can show you that, and all I'm doing is adding some 7K and some 50 hertz. Yeah, those Slate trigger samples are so great. Yeah, so there's the kick and snare with the drum loop that was played on a live kit. And I then added some toms. And like I said, I've just used that same little piece of audio that I've chopped out of the snare channel to trigger these toms, and just positioned them so they're kind of playing a flam across the two toms. So this is how they sound. And same thing again, just the trigger samples. So I'm using Fat Tom 2 and Fat Tom 3. And this is how all of the drums sound. We also added an extra snare with lots more reverb on it. So I'll play it with that in as well. So just added a few elements in there. We had a shaker as well, and a programmed hi-hat, and some live cymbal rolls, and a reverse white noise as well. So just all those little things just to create drama. There was one other bit here that I've just noticed. So I think this happened quite towards the end of the production. I felt like, similar to the thinking with the bass, with it all being lopsided on one half of the track, it felt like that was a similar problem with the drums, where there was nothing at the beginning and then it was all happening towards the end. So I decided to put like an ambient drum throughout the whole track, starting right at the very beginning. It's just a really good sample of a very large drum played with like a soft mallet. And that works perfectly, and it sort of lent itself well to the orchestral vibe that we kind of went for on this track. Moving on down, I used a Roland electronic drum kit to try and create the sound of a real timpani drum. I found it quite hard to program timpani without actually just trying to play it with a set of sticks. So using the Roland mesh head really helped to try and get a slightly more realistic sound. But as you'll hear, you can tell in isolation that it's not a real timpani, but it's certainly done the job in the track, so I can show you that. And it looks like we added an orchestra hit as well, just to mark the each bar. That sounded good. And that's all the drums. Went for a big kind of orchestral sound. Funnily enough, this was before The Greatest Showman even existed, but listen back to it now, it kind of sounds a little bit like something from The Greatest Showman. So that's the drums, and we've looked at the bass as well. So moving down, there's some more stuff that we added. Towards the end, whilst we were on this kind of orchestral journey, we added some tubular bells and some strings. And that went along with obviously all the bits that Beckie had existing from her demo. We added a rainmaker. With plenty of effects on it. They sound like bells that have been reversed. I don't even remember what that was. This one's a little bit of an interesting one. So this is the Buddha machine. Shout out to Jay, one of my studio partners at SS2. He's got some amazing equipment, and this is one of the quirky little things that I discovered in a drawer one day, and I showed Beckie and she absolutely loved it. It's called the Buddha machine, and I can show you a photo of it, give you an idea of what it is. So here's the Buddha machine. Essentially it's like a meditation box, really. It's got pre-existing loops loaded onto it, and those loops will just go round, and you can change the tempo and the pitch to sort of find the place where it feels good, and then you meditate. But we use it in the studio just to create an ambience, or in this instance we used it to create an ambience. So there's a lot of that kind of random noise just happening in this track and in a lot of Beckie's stuff. She's very keen on that sort of thing, and from an audio perspective, it's just so much fun to create that sort of stuff. So that's the Buddha machine. We also added a glockenspiel, which was we recorded. That sounds like this. And it's playing that melody, which is actually a harmony of what the piano does. So I can show you what the piano's doing. This song, I believe, was written on piano, and it's very much piano driven. So I can play you a bit of the piano. So there's the piano, and I can show you a photo of that too. Got one here ready to go. So this is the baby grand that we've got at SS2 that we would have used to record the piano on this track. At this time we didn't have the upright that you can see in the background. We just had this one piano. I'm assuming we probably would have taken the lid completely off, positioned a couple of condenser mics above it, and that's how we got the piano sound on this track. So that's the piano, and then that melody is then harmonized with the Glock. And at this point, when we were adding the glockenspiel and we added some guitars, Beckie's bandmate Daryl Tattoo came in and helped us finish the track. So what we often do on Beckie's stuff is me and Beckie will start in the morning and we'll work throughout the day, and then Daryl will come in the evening, add some guitars, give us his opinion on what we've done, maybe add some ideas, which works really well because by that point me and Beckie have been working for quite a while, and we're perhaps in need of a little bit of fresh energy So having Daryl come in, and he'll often bring like cool instruments in with him as well, and it's just inspiring. So he came in and added another guitar to harmonise with that piano. So just adding some nice melody to the track there. Daryl also added a guitar throughout the whole track, doing more sort of swelling and ambient stuff, so not too much melody. Okay, and then there's one other guitar part at the end. I think I probably would have asked Daryl to try this. I think I was looking for more energy to make that end section feel like we'd got into a new place sonically. So I probably would have asked him to say, you know, it needs to be distorted, it needs to be high, it needs to be played fast and hard. So we've really got that energy to contrast with all the real smooth, swelly sort of guitar parts. So I can play you that. So, and I can play you that in the track. So as you can hear there, it's doing a really big job of really filling the space around Beckie's vocal and just making that ending feel really, really big. Without it, it feels a little tame and a little boring to me. So that was Daryl's guitars. That would have just been probably a 57 or 421, or maybe both, on his cab. And I would have just committed those down, a little bit of compression, and it looks like I've just committed the guitar channels down. It might have been a few mics, and I've just summed them all into one guitar channel there. So that's the piano, that's the guitars, that's all the synths, that's all the drums. So I suppose the thing to look at next would be vocals. So Beckie's vocal, I'm pretty certain we used the Rode K2 through the Neve Portico preamp that we have, and I can play you a little bit of the vocal. So yeah, just have a little look at what I'm doing for the mixing on the vocal there. Just a de-esser from Waves. Adding lots of top end at 12.5K, adding some more top end with Revival, skipping out a little bit of 400, using the Fairchild to do compression. Just using the Fairchild with a real fast release there, just to give the vocal excitement. I've got a C4, just catching a few bits that are getting a little bit over the top. And then another de-esser at the end of the chain. And that's feeding a reverb, the real verb from UAD, set to church. And that's it. Really simple vocal chain on this one. I think Beckie's vocal's so powerful and sounds so great that I didn't want to do too much to it. And I would have compressed on the way in as well. As you can see, these waveforms are quite heavily controlled and they're all nice and even. So it would have been the K2 through the Neve Portico preamp into 1176, printed into Pro Tools. So the method for the BV here sounds like this. We wanted to add a double, but we wanted it to feel very separated from the lead vocal, so it was a complete contrast. So similar sort of thing with the EQs, but then using the Sans amp to really give it a different tone, and then also an 1/8 note delay with Echo Boy and a micro shift from Sound Toys as well to spread it out over to the sides. So there's the first BV there. And then on the first chorus, we just added the third harmony. And if I remember rightly, I think I had a second mic set up for BVs. It's kind of reminded me because I had it through the first channel of Neve rather than the second channel. So I think I probably would have had another mic ready to go for BVs. So I had a slightly different vocal sound for the BVs. So it's just that third harmony coming in on the first chorus. And then when we get to the end, we've got the fifth as well. Yeah, just beautiful, and that's all Beckie. You know, she's got these. She knows what she wants to do, and she gets in there to record. So I just have to get out of the way, let her do her thing. The only time where I do ask Beckie to do something that she might not do off her own back was perhaps something like this ad lib we've got on the last chorus here. So yeah, that's all the vocals at the end. Pretty epic. So the third and the fifth, or whether those were the actual harmonies that ended up happening, I'm not too sure. They are sitting in the middle with the lead vocal, and then towards the end there's some falsetto vocals that come in left and right, singing the line, "I hope you're happy." And then I did ask Beckie to just give me one more vocal that had all the emotion of the track sort of compressed into one short vocal line. And got her to really push herself and try and really sing something that she wasn't always necessarily comfortable doing, and it just gave us that absolute sort of hairs on the back of the neck moment, and that really completed the ending, and we just managed to find a spot for all those vocals. So with that ad lib, what I've done is I've just rolled off all the bottom end to try and give it very much a different tone to the other vocals, and then a similar thing, just EQ and de-essing. So all the vocals are quite similar, but every now and again I'll just add a plug-in like the Sans amp or the Isotope vinyl, just to give it a completely different tone, just so it sort of blends well. Yeah, and I think there's one other little thing we can look at. There's an 1/8 note triplet delay that I've used. The last word on the end of this line here. You can just hear it tailing off there. So it's H delay set to an 1/8 note triplet with quite a lot of feedback. And then I then used the Renaissance X to really quite heavily compress the delayed signal, so it really brings up that feedback. There's also some automation on there, volume automation, just sort of bringing up that feedback even more. So that's the vocals, and whilst we're on the subject of automation, there is a little bit on the drums. So I had to redo this for the video because the EQ that I used I don't no longer have. But the drums coming in where they do were just too overpowering for that part of the song, so we just used a low pass filter, and we just automated that low pass filter to slowly come up in its frequency, and I can show you how that sounds. I'll just solo the drums. So it's the full live drums with the samples that I played in, and you'll just see this this low pass filter move around.
Take me
So yeah, it just really sets us up for that second verse. It never quite reaches the climax, and it all drops away. And then as that second verse comes in, the drums are full spectrum again, and we let everything breathe. So that works quite well, because I'm sure there was a moment where we were like, the drums sound good, but they're just too much too soon, and they go on too long. And sometimes all it takes is just a little bit of automation on the EQ like that, just to make something fit in a track. So that's the drum. That was on the drum bus where all the drums are being fed into. On that drum bus, I've got a Novatron again from Kush Audio doing some compression. I can show you that. Yeah, just got that at kind of 30% or whatever. Just controlling things a little bit. A Pultec for some tone, boosting some 100 hertz on the Pultec. Nothing on this API EQ from Slate. I've just got the op amp switched in for a bit more tone. And then we've got that low pass filter automation at the start. So real simple on the drum bus again, not too crazy. Just the one drum bus, all the drums feeding into there, and then that's it. And then a lot of this other stuff, the timpani and the big drum, is all going straight to the mix bus. That's not going into the drum bus. Okay, moving on down, we've got a little bit of stuff happening on the mix bus. I can show you that. So the Clariphonic from Kush again, just adding some nice top end. I'm boosting a little bit on the clarity knob. I don't think I've got anything on the focus. It's turned completely off. But that being said, with this plugin, you can just select the switches to where you like the sound, and it's still adding some really nice top end. So you don't always have to turn it up, and you want to be quite subtle with that. It can be quite drastic. But that sounds really good on the mix bus on this occasion. Then we've got the Shadow Hills mastering compressor, just probably doing a dB. Yep, that one's often lives on my mix bus with very similar settings to that. I've got the Slate tape machine. I can let you hear how that sounds. Okay, next, got the Pultec doing my old trick where I boost in and I'm attenuating at 60 hertz. and I've also got a little dB at around 4K, which is a little unusual for my mix bus. I'm normally up at around 10-12K on the mix bus, but it looked like I was just looking for something. I was already getting some top end from the Clariphonic, so I was looking for something more in the mid range. So just a dB at 4K. I can let you hear how the Pultec sounds. Yeah, and that's everything. And I've just got a little bit of the slate limiter on the master bus. This is more for when I'm printing loud mixes for artists to listen to. This will be switched off before it goes to mastering, but I've just put it back on just for the purposes of the video to bring the level up. And that's everything. So please check out Beckie Margaret. She's going to have lots of music coming out very soon. This track's out online. You can go check it out. And follow her on all the platforms. Just want to say thanks to Cool Thing Records, thanks to New Art Films for letting me use the video for New York in this video. Thanks everyone for watching. Please like and subscribe. Share with your friends if you know anyone that might be interested in my videos. Please leave me a comment. Anything that you might have in mind that you'd like to see me do, please let me know. And I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.